Good evening, darling ones. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. How has your week been? I am somewhat on the back foot at the moment. I had intended this week to be one of spring cleaning, but a helpful soul sneezed on me on the bus, and instead, it has become a week of coughing and drinking hot lemon drinks. Fortunately, I had this poem ready and prepared for you. It was written by an old friend of mine. Whether from experience or not, I will leave it to you to decide. This is one of our spookier poems, so bunny slippers and soft plushies may be required. Grab your story listening gear. Turn up your heating. Snuggle under your duvet. And join me to learn the story of the Virtuous Vampire. The Virtuous Vampire. Now, time for bed. Hop in and snuggle down tight. It's been a big day, and you need to sleep. What's that? You say, I promised you a story. Yes, I'll sit down. What story will it be? You've decided that you want a true story. Okay, so which one do you want from me? I've plenty of tales from my old adventures. You want to hear how I met your mummy? It's not the nicest story to begin with. No, I promised. Just tell your mummy. It was your fault if you wind up with nightmares. You know how I hate when she's mad at me. This happened nearly 100 years ago. Back then, I was a bad man. I believed that all vampires were dead and rotting demons, and all the folk who denied it deceived. In those days, I was a hunter of our kind. To track them, I'd travel around the world. One day in London, I picked up the trail of what would turn out to be my darling girl. Unlike the banshee vampires and the cold ones, the vampire I tracked didn't seem hungry. In several months, she had only killed 3 men, hardly enough to sustain energy. I cornered her somewhere in Appalachia, in a building outside an old tin mine. We fought hard, and we injured one another. The battle lasted for a trying time, but in the end, she had me down on the ground. I was trapped, with no hope of getting free. I could only look up at her pretty fangs and wait for her to tear the life from me. She didn't, though. She whirled around and then fled. I lay there, stunned, not understanding how a vampire I'd hunted would spare me my life. I'd heard of nothing like it before now. At last, I got up and followed her again. 2 short nights later, I found it was me who had the vampire girl lying, defenseless, waiting for execution fearfully. Did I end her life? I tried, but I couldn't. Instead, my silver dust sent her to sleep. I called for transport, and I brought her in chains to the tower above my castle keep. Why the tower? Are you sure you want to know? I warn you that the answer is scary. Okay, the holding cells were in the tower, because then an escaping enemy would have to fight down 12 full floors of the keep, where men armed to the teeth would all await to see that they were chained again or else died before making from our stronghold escape. Also, in every cell, there was a machine that could, at a soft touch from anyone, retract the shutters that held out the daylight and drown the vampire in the burning sun. You see, I needed to know what odd reason had prompted the vampire to spare my life. I never dreamed the lady with the bright fangs would be my lover and one day my wife. I wasn't kind. I didn't hurt your mother, but left her 2 days in a cell, alone. before I clambered up the spiral staircase to ask her about the kindness she'd shown. I expected a monster, a vile demon. Instead, your mother smiled tiredly and asked if I'd been healed of all of my wounds. I showed her the scar she had given me. Yes, the silver one, right above my right eye. She asked me for forgiveness for my pain. She had not fought me out of wish to do harm, but so that she could flee from me again. I asked your mother why she'd fed so rarely. She sat on her bunk and explained to me how, by feeding little and often from men and women in crowded localities, like pubs and clubs, she kept hunger at bay. That way, no one was turned or had to die. I asked her about the 3 dead men, and she shook her graceful head and gave a sigh. It seemed the men had been utterly wicked. She had caught them doing harm to the young and threatening the old and vulnerable. She told me if she listed what they'd done, I would have killed them myself, and that gladly. I saw the truth when I looked in her eyes. At last, I asked her why she had spared me then. She had all right, a hunter to despise. She smiled at me, but her silver eyes glistened. She said, "Because I don't want you to die. I don't want to kill anybody, truly. I never wanted that," she said and cried. I was turned by one, who then abandoned me. I woke in a bin, left behind for dead. I'd barely found my feet when you caught my trail. So I left everything behind and fled. I asked her if she now regretted that she had spared my life. She smiled and asked me, "Why? As afraid as I am of what you must do. At least today, just one of us must die." What could I say? She was all grace and kindness, but I, the fool that I was afraid. I entered her cell when she showed me she could touch a holy cross with her skin unflayed. That's when your mother asked me one last favor. If I meant to don death's mantle for her, would I please kill her soon, and do it quickly, before hunger made a fury of her. She meant it too. She wanted to die herself, not some mad beast by hunger driven wild. But I could no more have harmed her after that than I could have slain an innocent child. How could I spare her now that she was in chains and all my people had their eyes on me? I cursed myself for not seeing truth sooner, when I could have stepped back and let her flee. Thinking fast, I told her that she was coming to my chambers to talk further with me. The guards just grimaced when they saw us passing, doubtless thinking vile things of her and me. When we were behind locked doors, I told her that I'd seen the truth and I believed in her, and that I would do my best to set her free. Although enemies such as we were had never before attempted an escape, I told her it was certain I would die. When my men learned I'd given back her freedom, she wasn't to hesitate, but to fly. She pushed her white blonde hair out of her face and said, "There's one solution I can see. Let me drink your blood so I can become strong. And after that, you take some blood from me. That way, you too will inherit my powers and can survive as we make our escape. You will not be a terror though, believe me. I'll teach you to feed if you just have faith." I felt such terror and sorrow that moment, but her silver eyes were looking at me. I couldn't let her take the chance all alone. So I raised my head and said, "Drink from me." Her fangs barely made a sting. She drank quickly, and I braced myself to be left behind. But she bit her wrist and held it to my lips. She told me, "Now, be brave and drink from mine." So that night, I became what we all are now. And yes, your mother and I both fought free. We were injured, but we still remained standing. And every step she took was beside me. Was love there already? I don't really know. But soon it came, and day by day, it grew. Who knew then we'd truly begun a new life? In 9 short months, she surprised me with you. So that's the story, or the broad strokes of it. The rest you too will learn when you are grown. Suffice it to say, your beloved mother took a man who was empty and alone, and with her kindness, her wit and her mercy, she called on something far better in me. And now, because of my virtuous vampire, we 4 will always be a family. Subscribe to become a delicious darling. Hey guys, I would love to hear what you thought of this poem. It differs from many of the others we have shared, but I like the conversational style. I also like the idea that an enemy can become a friend, if seen from a different angle. Today's word, for those who watched the whole episode, is virtue. Type it into the comments. Then tell me whether you would become a vampire if given the option, and why. If you want to save a Panthani from being hunted by vampires, please click like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to become an official delicious darling. I am still feeling under the weather, so tonight, I will be curling up with a panthan and rice. Have a wonderful week. Look after yourself and those you love. Watch out for vampires. And sweet dreams, my delicious darlings.